So Malcolm X, the reason I said he was a system scientist was that, he was born, like all of us, into a particular environment. His environment was that of a Black person in the United States at a time when there was massive oppression. I grew up in India with the era of the caste system, and each one of us has our own journey. So based on our background, we try to figure out the world and try to understand the problem and try to figure out what the solutions are, if you care. Some people don't. So in that process, you have ideas, right? Malcolm X went through his journey, and he came bottoms up in many ways. He was thrown in jail for stealing, and then he went through the Nation of Islam. I'm not going to go through his entire history, but the experience he had with racism, he wanted to understand how this was going on. The Nation of Islam was a religious organization which promoted the concept of Black nationalism. It was led by a guy called Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad also preached a certain set of ethical behavior. And over time, Malcolm X found out that the ethical behavior that Elijah Muhammad spoke, what he spoke did not conform to what he actually did. Malcolm had a disillusionment with this. He went to Mecca, which was the holy pilgrimage place for Muslims, and he had an experience there where he started recognizing that some of his ideas didn't make sense. And so I'm going to give you an interview that he gave to a magazine, Young Socialist, right here. Let me bring it up. This was what he gave in April of 1965. And he said, when I was in Africa, in May and Ghana, I was speaking with the Algerian ambassador who is extremely militant and is a revolutionary in the true sense of the word, and has his credentials as such for having carried out on a successful revolution against oppression in this country. Algeria, as many of you may know, was controlled by French colonialism. When I told him, this is Malcolm X saying, that my political, social, and economic philosophy was Black nationalism, he asked me very frankly, well, where did that leave him? Because he was white. He was an African, but he was Algerian, and to all appearances, he was a white man. And he said, if I define my objective as a victory of Black nationalism, where does that leave him? Where does that leave revolutionaries in Morocco, Egypt, Iraq, Mauritania? So he showed me where I was alienating people who were true revolutionaries, dedicated to overturning the system of exploitation that exists on this earth by any means necessary. So he says, I had a lot of thinking and reappraising of my definition of Black nationalism. Can we sum up the solution to the problems confronting our people as Black nationalism? And if you notice, I haven't been using the expression for several months, but I still would be hard-pressed to give a specific definition of the overall philosophy, which I think is necessary for the liberation of the Black people in this country. So he gave that interview in March, April of 1965. And it's a very compelling interview because he was doing self-assessment of himself and recognizing that he may be potentially off. Now, I'm going to share with you one of the diagrams that we have when you go to vashiva.com/join. There's a systems diagram that if you go to vashiva.com/join here, you will see there's a systems diagram, which has a foundation systems course. It has all the things you get in the course, but one of the diagrams I want to take you is this diagram. This is what's called a intelligent systems feedback diagram, okay? And what you see here is that you have a goal, you get output, and this occurs in every engineering system through a sensor. And if your goal and what you're seeing from the output match, then you know that you're headed in the right direction. Example I gave, you want to achieve a certain weight. You want to, let's say your weight is 180 pounds and you want to go down to 160. You stand on the weight scale, you start doing exercising, you start eating the right foods, and you notice you're getting down to 170. You say, great, the controller is you. You make better decisions and you keep doing that. You go down to 160 and you say, great. So this is what's the process of an intelligent feedback system. So you have a goal. You, as the mind, make decisions to put inputs into you, the world, you get an output. Anyway, the reason I'm sharing this with you is in a very quick way, this is what we call the systems process. System scientists understand this. So Malcolm X started recognizing that there was something off in his thinking, right? Things that he thought were correct were not right. That he has this contradiction where he's talking to another fellow agent of change, a revolutionary in Algeria, who's saying, hey, look, I'm white. You're saying you want to fight exploitation, but you're just talking about Black nationalism. Where does that leave me? All right. So what happens is Malcolm X, and this is what you call someone who's truly honest, and a real scientist or a real engineer is honest. So you can see about Malcolm X was also had come to a different thing by January of 1965. And what he realizes, let me go to this, he realizes, actually that interview was before April, sorry about that. What he realizes is the following. He says in January 1965, he goes, I believe that there will ultimately be a clash, which is a quote I read, but it's good to read it again, between the oppressed and those who do the oppressing. I believe that there will be a clash between those who want freedom, justice, and equality for everyone, and those who want to continue the system of exploitation. I believe that there will be that kind of clash, but I don't think it will be based on the color of the skin, as Elijah Muhammad taught. So the previous one, actually, I said April 65, is actually 64. Sorry about that. So just make a correction. But anyway, so think about what he's saying. He went through a journey where he realized that he had to move beyond quote unquote black nationalism to recognize that the system of exploitation affected whether you're black, white, yellow, green, brown, etc. And that was a significant change in his outlook. And what's unfortunate is, so this was January 19th, 1965. And remember, his life was always, when he was with the Nation of Islam, really talking about black nationalism, the wicked white man, we have to kill the white man, we have to have our own area. And that was, I'm sort of simplifying it, but the transformation he went through was realizing that this didn't connect, right? But the important thing, the cool thing as a scientist is he changes his viewpoint and is able to take in new information. Now, the unfortunate thing is what this meant was that Malcolm X would become much more of a leader of all working people, right? He wouldn't just be bucketed as a black leader. And you have to recognize that those in power like to split up black and white people. They like to split up people in the left and the right, Republican, Democrat, Labor, Tory, wherever you are, because that is a very powerful way of keeping the dialectic going, right? So you take, as we talked about yesterday, the elephant, which is a whole system, and you break it up into parts and you have people fighting. And this is a very, very powerful example of how racism serves. The real racism is where you do not address the real issues of racism, exploitation, right? But you rather make it a black issue or white issue and you have people fighting. Now, the unfortunate thing is a few months, literally 1 month, less than 30 days after Malcolm X came to that position, gave that interview, he was shot. And this is powerful because, which means that he would become not just a black nationalist leader, but a leader for all people. And as long as they could bucket him as this black guy who was just talking about black nationalism, it was easy to isolate him. It's unfortunate, but that's what occurred. And this occurred to many, many civil rights leaders towards the mid to late 60s. It occurred to people who were starting to move away from a very parochial position to much more of a universal position, but more importantly, understanding the real problem. They were taking a systems approach. So I wanted to share that with you because this is a real example of someone who applied, in my view, system science. Maybe Malcolm X didn't know he was doing that, but that's what he actually applied. What's interesting was that for 50 years, they incarcerated 2 black men in prison for shooting him. And it was only last year they found out, guess what? The people that they incarcerated were actually not who, and here's the article that came out in the Innocence Project. You can go read about it, but it said, branded Malcolm X's assassins for half a century, 2 men are finally exonerated. Here's why that matters. This is just the first step in correcting the record of this pivotal moment in history. And you can go read the article, but it basically talks about they still don't know who shot Malcolm X, okay? Which is very, very interesting. But it leads one to recognize that when we take an approach of finding the real problem and the real solution, right? In this case, that the real problem is exploitation and the real solution is the unity of all peoples who are committed to fighting that. And that's what a systems approach leads you to. So if you know our movement for truth, freedom, and health is really about educating you, because ultimately we're not going to win truth or freedom or health by going directly and thinking that we're going to win on their platform of being in the left position or the right position. It's a very, very tempting thing to think you're going to do electoral politics, you're going to be a Democrat or Republican, and it really doesn't lead anywhere. Ultimately, we have to build a movement that is based on enlightening people bottoms up. That's what it's about. And that bottoms up movement comes from a systems approach. That's why I keep emphasizing that I hope all of you take advantage of this learning. Someone says, Dr. Shiva, I'm so grateful you're enlightening everyone, but what if they Malcolm X you? Bless you. They're indoctrinating by weaponizing the media and exploiting social movements. It's true. Thank you for sharing that. So anyway, yesterday was Malcolm X's birthday. I hope we honor him by all of us moving beyond left and right and taking a systems approach. And that's what I have to share today. One way that I hope you honor yourself is take this systems approach. One of the small contribution I believe we've made is we've created a curriculum, we've created a community, we've created a technology platform so you can learn this, and you can go to vashiva.com/join to do this. We've created this for you in honoring all these great people before who attempted to make the world a better place.